Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a 2020 action role-playing video game developed by Ubisoft Montreal and published by Ubisoft. It is the 12th major installment in the Assassin's Creed series, and the successor to 2018's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Principally set in the years 872 to 878 AD, the game recounts a fictional story during the Viking expansions into the British Isles. Players control Eivor Varinsdottir, a Viking raider who, while attempting to establish a new Viking clan in England, becomes embroiled in the centuries-old conflict between the Assassin Brotherhood, who fight for peace and liberty, and the Templar Order, who desire peace through control. The game also includes a framing story, set in the 21st century, which follows Layla Hassan, an assassin who relives Eivor's memories so as to find a way to save the Earth from destruction. Development of the game began in 2017, around the release of Assassin's Creed Origins. Ubisoft Montreal led its 3-year development with help from 14 other Ubisoft studios worldwide, as well as Sperasoft. Numerous people involved in the development of past Assassin's Creed games returned for Valhalla, including Ashraf Ismail, who served as the creative director for Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag and Origins, Darby McDevitt, the lead writer for Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Revelations and co-writer of Assassin's Creed Unity, and composers Jesper Kyd and Sarah Schachner, who composed the game's music alongside Einar Selvik. Similarly to Origins and Odyssey, the team conducted extensive research into the time period to make the game world as historically accurate as possible, and drew inspiration from Norse mythology for certain narrative elements. The team also sought to address some issues found by players with Odyssey, such as its over-ambitiousness, small focus on the Assassin-Templar conflict, and the absence of traditional Assassin's Creed gameplay elements like social stealth. Valhalla was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and Series S, and Stadia on November 10, 2020, with the PlayStation 5 version following on November 12. It received generally positive reviews, with praise for the narrative, characters, voice acting, visuals, soundtrack, world design and the interconnectivity of activities, while being criticized for its length, technical issues, and repetitive structure. Valhalla had the biggest launch in the Assassin's Creed series to date, selling the most copies within its first week and becoming the second most profitable Ubisoft title of all time. Ubisoft supported the game with several releases of downloadable content, including 3 story expansions, Wrath of the Druids, The Siege of Paris, and Dawn of Ragnarok. It will be followed in 2023 by Assassin's Creed Mirage, which features a historical setting in Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age and follows Basim ibn Ishaq, a major supporting character from Valhalla. Gameplay. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a role-playing video game structured around several main story arcs and numerous optional side missions, called world events. The player takes on the role of Eivor Varinsdottir, a Viking raider, as they lead their fellow Vikings against the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The player has the choice of playing Eivor as either female or male, voiced by Cecily Stenspiel and Magnus Brunn respectively, or letting the game alternate between the two at key moments in the story, with the female avatar depicting Eivor's life and the male avatar depicting the physical appearance of the Isu Odin, due to his connection with Eivor. The player is also able to customize Eivor's hair, beard, war paint, clothing, armor, and tattoos. The variety of weapons available to the player has been expanded to include weapons such as flails and greatswords. Combat has been changed to allow dual wielding of almost any weapon, including shields, and every piece of gear that the player collects is unique. The eagle vision mechanic of previous titles returns in the form of Odin's sight. The player's companion animal is a raven named Sinin, Old Norse for insight, who can be used to scout the nearby areas, much like previous avian companions had done in Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, and other parts of the game world from afar before Eivor engages in combat. There is more focus on the stealth aspects for both traversing the game world and in combat. The social stealth concept from earlier Assassin's Creed games returns, Eivor can hide from enemies not only in stationary environmental objects but can pull down the hood and slip into certain crowds to use them as cover. Eivor can feign death, use her raven to distract guards, and can access a hidden blade for near-instantaneous assassinations. Most of the game's enemies, through specific combinations of approaches, tactics, and weapon selection, are able to be assassinated through a single attack, with the notable exception of bosses, but still can be defeated through numerous other routes. Valhalla has a familiar structure of main story missions and a number of optional side missions. While the main storyline in past Assassin's Creed games typically moved linearly through the main sections of the game world, Valhalla has the player often returning to the main settlement and back to areas previously visited as information about the new areas of England is learned by the Vikings through reconnaissance or from contacts. Not all missions require violent ends, with some that can be resolved through diplomatic means. Player choices through conversation or gameplay options will affect the characters and their political alliances with other non-player characters. The game also relies less on a traditional leveling system and instead focuses more on the selection of skills through skill trees selected by the player as Eivor advances through the game. The difficulty posed by enemies is rated based on the player's collection of skills. The development team aimed to introduce a wider range of enemy archetypes to Valhalla than in previous titles, as they wanted the player to be continually surprised by the game even after playing for tens of hours. Narrative director Darby McDevitt said that the game has 25 unique enemy archetypes, and each has a unique way of challenging the player. Enemies can also use objects in the environment to their advantage. Some enemies are also capable of adapting to the player's actions and combat and finding ways to defend themselves. Enemies can also show personality during combat. While some might be intimidated by Eivor and fight more defensively, others might be more aggressive in their approach. Conquest battles, a feature introduced to the series in Odyssey, return in the form of assaults, which see the player lead armies to attack fortresses. Raids, smaller engagements where the player leads a raiding party to attack a target and secure resources for their settlement. The player is able to build a raiding party by recruiting non-player characters to assist with these. The player is able to create a Viking mercenary, or Jomsviking, that can be recruited by other players to act as a non-playable character within those games. The player gains additional in-game rewards for successful missions that their Jomsviking takes part in. As part of the game's first season of DLC content, an expanded River Raids game mode was introduced, which offers replayable raiding locations in new regions of England not reachable in the main map. The game also sees the return of player settlements, which have been absent from the series since Assassin's Creed IV, Black Flag. However, where previous player settlements offered passive gameplay bonuses, the settlement in Valhalla takes on a renewed importance. Game director Ashraf Ismail described this as being, because a lot of what you're doing in the game world is, at the end of the day, going to feed into the settlement so that it can grow, it can flourish. Quests start and finish in the settlement, and the player is able to direct the construction of certain types of buildings, which in turn provide benefits for gameplay. To build these structures, the player needs to lead the Vikings on raids to collect resources. As with Odyssey, the player is able to explore romance options for Eivor, including same-sex relations. Though the use of naval transport has returned, naval combat has been dialed back. Eivor's longship acts more as a means of travel when performing raids and for escaping after land combat, rather than being used in combat with other naval vessels. In addition to these, the player can engage in a variety of activities such as hunting, fishing, brawls with other Vikings, drinking contests, and fighting challenges, which Ubisoft described as Viking rap battles, in addition to an original dice game called Orlog and Cairn Construction. Setting. In 873 CE, political pressures in Norway prompt Eivor Varinsdottir, d. and her adoptive older brother, Sigurd Styrbjornsson, to lead their clan of Vikings to settle new lands in Anglo-Saxon England, as part of the Viking expansion across Europe. The clan comes into conflict with the kingdoms of Wessex, Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia over the next several years, as well as the warring sons of the legendary Viking warrior Ragnar Lothbrok, who made up the great heathen army. Eivor's clan faces forces led by the rulers of these kingdoms, including Alfred the Great, the King of Wessex. It is during this time that Eivor meets the Hidden Ones, precursors to the Assassin Brotherhood, and aids them in their fight against the Order of the Ancients, precursors to the Templar Order. Explorable cities include Winchester, London, and York. Parts of Norway and Vinland are also included, while dreamscapes of Asgard and Jotunheim also feature. As with previous games in the series, Valhalla also features a narrative set in the modern day, which follows Layla Hassan, the modern-day protagonist previously featured in Origins and Odyssey. Valhalla also contains story elements related to the Aizu, who, as part of the lore of the Assassin's Creed series, are an advanced civilization that predate humanity. Plot. In 2020, the unexplained strengthening of Earth's magnetic field negatively affects the planet. Layla Hassan, Sean Hastings, and Rebecca Crane receive a signal with coordinates in New England, where they exhume a Viking raider's remains. Layla, struggling with the staff of Hermes, enters the Animus to view the raider's memories. In 855 CE in Norway, a young Eivor Varinsdottir witnesses warlord Kjotv the Cruel sacking her hometown and killing her parents before she is rescued by Sigurd, son of King Sturbjorn of the Raven clan. 17 years later, Eivor has been adopted by Sturbjorn and pursues vengeance against Kjotv. Her latest attempt fails, but she recovers her father's axe. Touching it, Eivor experiences a vision of Odin, leading her to consult the local seer, Valka. Valka induces another vision of Sigurd losing an arm before being consumed by a giant wolf. Sigurd returns from a raid with foreigners Basim and Hytham, members of the Hidden Ones, who came to Norway to assassinate Kjotv, a member of the opposing Order of the Ancients. Defying Sturbjorn's orders, the siblings enlist King Harald's help to eliminate Kjotv. Following their victory, Harald declares his intention to unite Norway under his rule. Sturbjorn pledges fealty to Harald, angering Sigurd, who expected to inherit the crown. He and Eivor take loyalists in the clan on an exodus to England to establish their own kingdom. They name it Ravensthorpe and form alliances with local Viking clans and Saxon kingdoms led by Eivor, Halfdan, Ubba Ragnarsson, Guthrum, and Ceolwulf of Mercia. Meanwhile, Eivor helps Hytham assassinate local order members, following tip-offs from a poor fellow soldier of Christ. Eivor's visions continue. Valka gives her an elixir that makes her dream of Asgard from Odin's perspective. Hoping to avert his own fated death by Ragnarok, Odin travels to Jotunheim to retrieve a magical mead that will ensure his soul will be reincarnated. After returning to Asgard, Odin and the other Aesir, including Thor, Tyr, and Freyja, drink the mead and pass their souls to Yggdrasil, but forbid Loki, who defied Odin by conceiving a son, Fenrir, from partaking in the ritual. Layla realizes these are actually visions of the Aizu during the Great Catastrophe, and that Loki defied Odin again, ensuring his survival. Sigurd and Basim discover an Aizu relic, and Sigurd, with Basim's encouragement, comes to believe himself a god. Fulk, an Order agent and servant of King Aelfred of Wessex, captures Sigurd, believing him to be an Aizu or descendant thereof, and tortures him, removing his right arm. Eivor and Basim kill Fulk and rescue a traumatized Sigurd. Eivor and Sigurd later travel to Norway, where they uncover an Aizu temple with an advanced tree-shaped computer system. The siblings connect to it and are seemingly transported to Valhalla, where they enjoy endless battle, before realizing Valhalla is a dream world and escaping. Outside, Basim confronts them, revealing that Eivor, Sigurd, and himself are reincarnations of Odin, Tyr, and Loki respectively. Basim, possessed by Loki, attacks Eivor, seeking revenge on Odin for imprisoning Fenrir, but she and Sigurd trap him in the computer. Sigurd abdicates leadership of the clan to Eivor. In England, Eivor and her allies join Guthrum's assault on Wessex, defeating Aelfred's forces at the Battle of Chippenham. Eivor later tracks down Aelfred, and learns that he is the Grand Master of the Order of the Ancients and the poor fellow soldier of Christ. Disgusted by the Order's heresy against Christianity, Aelfred sought to replace it with a new God-fearing order. Eivor spares Aelfred and returns to Ravensthorpe to a hero's welcome. In the present, the assassins deduced the strengthening magnetic field is a result of Desmond Miles's activation of the Izu Towers in 2012. To stabilize the field, Layla travels to the Norway Temple and enters the simulation. She meets Basim, who reveals that he led the assassins to Eivor, and tells her how to stabilize the magnetic field. She does so, but this releases Basim and traps Layla in the simulation. She encounters a being called the Reader, and decides to work with him to prevent future disasters. Meanwhile, Basim escapes the temple with the Staff of Hermes, containing the consciousness of Loki's lover, Alethea, and meets Sean and Rebecca. After they leave to bring William Miles, Basim enters the Animus to track down Loki's missing children. Wrath of the Druids. In 879, Eivor receives a letter from her maternal cousin Barid mac Imair, now King of Dublin, requesting her assistance in Ireland. Eivor agrees to help Barid secure an alliance with Flann Sinna, who is to be crowned High King of Ireland. After uncovering and foiling a plot to assassinate Flann ahead of his coronation, he requests Eivor's help to gather allies and strengthen his rule. Upon taking the castle of Cashelaw, Eivor discovers that Flann's army has been poisoned and seeks an antidote with Flann's advisor, Ciara Ingen Medba. Eivor learns that the children of Varnu, a cult of druids who seek to oust the Norse and Christian faiths from Ireland, are responsible, and begins hunting down their members. Eivor also discovers that Ciara is a former cult member, having left upon learning of their extremist ways. In 881, Eivor uncovers the identity of the cult's leader, Egan mac Carte, the abbot of Armagh, who feigned Christian faith. While informing Flann and Barid, Egan has his forces besiege Clogher. Barid is killed in the attack, prompting Eivor to exact revenge and kill Egan. In the aftermath, the kings of Ireland decide to eradicate the Druidic faith entirely, and Flann reluctantly agrees to launch an inquisition against the Druids. Enraged upon learning of this, Ciara goes to Lear Fail to use its power to prevent her culture from being eradicated. She tries to take control of Flann and his men, but Eivor defeats her and the Lear Fail is destroyed. Flann reflects on his decision and promises to be a good king for all the people of Ireland, cancelling the Inquisition. Meanwhile, Eivor meets with Sichfrith, Barid's son, who succeeded him as King of Dublin. The two reflect on Barid's dreams, and bond as family. The Siege of Paris. In 885, Eivor is recruited by Tóka Sinriksdottir, a Viking raider from Francia, to partake in a planned raid on the city of Paris. In Melun, Eivor meets Sigfred, Tóka's uncle and Jarl, who seeks vengeance against the Franks for the death of his brother Sincric, Tóka's father. After pushing back an attack by the Frankish bishop Engelwin, the man responsible for Sincric's death, Eivor and Sigfred follow him back to Paris, where the former assassinates Engelwin, discovering his affiliation with a secretive, zealous sect of the church called the Bellators Dei, God's Warriors. Afterwards, hoping to avert war, Eivor seeks an audience with the Frankish Emperor Charles the Fat, who agrees in exchange for the return of his missing wife Richardise. Eivor finds her being held captive by another Bellators Dei member, a nun known as Little Mother, whom she kills before rescuing Richardise. The two then head to Lisieux, where Eivor meets Bernard, Charles' illegitimate but only male heir. Eivor realizes that Charles actually seeks Bernard, and that Richardise is protecting him, to prevent him from being corrupted by his father. After meeting with and being betrayed by Charles, Eivor returns to Sigfred, just as the Viking army prepares for the siege of Paris. Still hoping for a peaceful resolution, Eivor seeks out Count Odo, Paris' military leader, but he rejects her offer of peace. As the Vikings raid the city, Eivor becomes dejected after witnessing Sigfred's bloodlust, and infiltrates Odo's palace to force him to surrender. Sigfred agrees to end the siege in exchange for a hefty sum of silver and is made protector of Normandy, abdicating leadership of the clan in favor of Tóka. Later, Odo contacts Eivor, asking her to find Richardise and Bernard, who have gone missing. Eivor rescues Richardes from an ordeal by fire she was put through by an increasingly mad Charles, before confronting and potentially killing Charles. Regardless of the outcome, Odo steps in to fill the void left by Charles' absence, and Eivor returns to England knowing she has a new friend and ally in Toka. Dawn of Ragnarok. After Odin and Frigg's son Balder is kidnapped by the Muspelheim warlord Surtur, the two travel to Svartalfheim amid the Muspel's invasion to rescue him. Odin fights Surtur, but is defeated, and Frigg is killed by Surtur's wife Sinmara. Left for dead, Odin is saved by the dwarfs who have taken shelter from the invasion. Seeking a way to defeat Surtur, Odin rescues the dwarf leader Ivaldi from Surtur's son Glod and kills the latter in combat. Odin later fights Surtur's daughter Isa, hoping to use her to bargain for Balder's life. Although she escapes, Odin learns of a powerful relic called Salaka that Surtur seeks for himself. Odin retrieves the Salaka before Surtur can and obtains Isa's allegiance. Sinmara agrees to trade Balder for the Salaka. However, at the exchange, Balder is revealed to be a Jotun in disguise. Odin pursues Sinmara and finds the real Balder, already dead. Sinmara kills Isa for her betrayal before being slain by a grieving Odin. Odin then goes after Surtur and manages to defeat him using the Salaka, avenging his son. He returns to Ivaldi to inform him of his victory, but is greeted by Hyrrokin, who warns him that Surtur's death has started the Ragnarok. Odin vows to survive it, even if not in his current body, leading into the events later witnessed by Eivor in her visions. Development. Assassin's Creed Valhalla had been in development for more than 2.5 years by its announcement in April 2020. The main development was led by the Assassin's Creed Origins team at Ubisoft Montreal and supported by 14 other Ubisoft studios worldwide. While the tail end of the game's development fell during the COVID-19 pandemic, the bulk of the Ubisoft staff assigned to the game were able to work from home with the support of Ubisoft's information technology departments, assuring the game was ready for release in 2020. Ashraf Ismail served as the creative director, having previously led work on Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed IV: Black Flag. The game's narrative director was Darby McDevitt, who was the lead writer for Assassin's Creed, Revelations and Black Flag and co-writer of Assassin's Creed Unity. As gamers, Mike Williams described the large scope and effort behind Assassin's Creed Valhalla as the equivalent of the series' grand unifying theory, to combine all the past design and development work into a single vision without necessarily reinventing any of the previously developed concepts. McDevitt explained that Valhalla's story was written as a recap of all the prior Assassin's Creed games, connecting them in non-trivial fashions, but not intended to be the final game in the series. He also stated that his experimental structure to the narrative was quite unique for any game he had seen as well as for the Assassin's Creed series itself. Ismail cited Michael Crichton's 1976 novel Eaters of the Dead, itself a retelling of the epic poem Beowulf, as playing a major role in influencing Valhalla's setting. McDevitt said that the development team recognized there would be similarities to the God of War games, but felt those games skew very heavily towards the mythology, whereas Ubisoft wanted Valhalla to be a more historically grounded experience. Elements of Norse mythology appear in the story. According to Ismail, this was based on how Eivor and the Vikings may take uncommon events to be signs of their god's involvement rather than the more overt role that mythology played in Origins and Odyssey. This was particularly in light that much of the game takes place in England where Christianity dominated, so that the narrative and gameplay shows how Eivor would incorporate such foreign elements into their belief system. On the ability to select Eivor's gender, Thierry Noël, an advisor to the game, stated that while there was still historical debate to how much degree females participated as warriors within the Vikings, Ubisoft believed that women featured prominently in both Norse mythology and society, and so sought to reflect the Viking idea that women and men are equally formidable in battle. In researching the time period, Ismail and McDevitt said that the development team found that most historical records of the Viking expansion into Britain were written decades, if not centuries, after the event. They were often written from the perspective of the Anglo-Saxons and so portrayed Vikings as bloodthirsty invaders. However, the development team felt that this overlooked the Vikings' success in settling in England and the contributions they made to agricultural practices and their influence on the English language. The development team thus sought to portray the Viking Age more accurately, emphasizing elements such as the settlement. This was represented in the trailer and promotional materials by juxtaposing Alfred the Great's narration warning of the threat posed by the Vikings with scenes showing the Viking community. This research, in turn, led the team to make the settlement a focal point of the game and gave Valhalla more of a role-playing flavor, according to lead producer Julien Laferriere. He compared the settlement's relevance to the importance of Skyhold in Dragon Age, Inquisition or the SSV Normandy in Mass Effect. Laferriere added that the team came to use the settlement not only to show the more cultured side of the Vikings, but as a means to show the player the results of choices they made in the game, including the harsh choices one had to face from missions. In a tweet that was later deleted, Ubisoft's head of communications for the Middle East Malek Tefaha discussed the subject of the game world, where he stated that Valhalla will not be the largest or biggest game in the series. Tefaha also stated that Valhalla would address one of the main criticisms of Odyssey, namely that the game suffered from a bloated world populated by repetitive locations. In their review of Odyssey, IGN noted that the main story campaign, not including downloadable content, lasted for roughly 40 hours, but that completing every side quest and location could extend that to over 100 hours. In a later interview with Kotaku, Ismail described that much of the game's world was handcrafted and that they had put effort to developing content that was worthwhile for the player to explore and find that content, keeping it about uniqueness and about respecting our players' time and giving them mysteries and puzzles to sort of resolve. Music for the game was composed by Jesper Kyd and Sarah Schachner, both of whom have worked on past Assassin's Creed games. Einar Selvik, who had written original songs for the History Channel show Vikings, worked with Kyd and Schachner on new songs for Valhalla. In June 2020, among other issues related to sexual misconduct within Ubisoft, Polygon reported that Ismail said he would step down from the project following accusations of multiple extramarital affairs with younger fans. Ubisoft later confirmed his departure to Polygon. In the month that followed, several other high-level executives from Ubisoft were also forced to leave the company, including the company's chief creative officer Serge Hascoët. Reports from French newspaper Libération and American news agency Bloomberg News stated that besides concerns related to professional misconduct within the company, Hascoët and other members of the editorial team had also suppressed the use of female characters in several of the Assassin's Creed games. Some members of the Valhalla development team later stated that they had wanted the protagonist to be exclusively female and had selected the name, Eivor, as an exclusively female name in Nordic databases, but had been turned down by executives who believed that a female-only protagonist would be detrimental to total game sales. McDevitt said that in writing the story, Ubisoft wanted to give players the ability to select the gender of the player character of the game, and thus had built this aspect since the start of the narrative development. Assassin's Creed Valhalla introduces to the series a number of features designed to make the game more accessible to physically impaired gamers. These include, among other things, audio menu narration, and audio cues for interactive objects and partial full quest completion, adjustments for QuickTime events, and the addition of Guaranteed Assassinate, a feature that enables players to skip the in-game timing window to successfully dispatch a target without concern. Release. Valhalla was originally announced to release on November 17, 2020, before later confirming that the release date had been brought forward to November 10, 2020, so that the game could be released on the launch of the Xbox Series XS. The game was being released for the Xbox Series XS, Microsoft Windows, the Xbox One, Stadia, the PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. It is also the first Assassin's Creed title for the next generation of consoles, the Xbox Series XS and PlayStation 5. Ismail said that Valhalla represents Ubisoft's flagship game for these next-generation systems, and has been developed to take advantage of faster loading times both new consoles offer. 4 editions of the game were released: a standard edition, a gold edition with a bundled season pass, a Valhalla edition with that plus various in-game customizations, and a Ragnarok edition with that plus a steelbook and personal statue. Players on the Xbox One or PlayStation 4 are able to upgrade their game to the next-gen version on their respective platform at no extra cost. Ubisoft's 2019 title Tom Clancy's The Division 2 included an Easter egg in the form of a poster that appeared to tease the next Assassin's Creed game as named Valhalla. The poster included an image of a Viking dressed in a similar fashion to an assassin of the series' previous titles and held what appeared to be an Apple of Eden, one of the Izu artifacts featured in the series. The Easter egg led Jason Schreier of Kotaku to report that there was a new Assassin's Creed title in development, planned for release in 2020. However, on the game's official announcement in April 2020, McDevitt said that the Easter egg in The Division 2 was a coincidence as the Swedish studio behind the game, Massive Entertainment, wanted to incorporate some Swedish iconography into The Division 2 and had no intention of referencing or teasing Valhalla. Additional content. Ubisoft announced that they would release an exclusive mission titled The Legend of Beowulf for players who pre-ordered the game. Additional post-release content was made available through a season pass. This included several story expansions. The first, titled Wrath of the Druids, takes Eivor to Ireland to eliminate a cult of druids called the Children of Vanu. The second, titled The Siege of Paris, sees Eivor traveling to Francia for the Siege of Paris. Similarly to what they had done for Origins and Odyssey, Ubisoft developed an additional Discovery Tour mode for Valhalla, which removes all combat from the game and allows players to roam medieval England and Norway at their own pace and learn more about their history and culture by embarking on guided tours curated by historians. The mode, titled Discovery Tour, Viking Age, was released for free in October 2021, serving as the 3rd installment of the Discovery Tour subseries. In June 2021, Ubisoft announced that Valhalla would be the first Assassin's Creed game to receive a second year of support, including new updates and expansions. In December 2021, Ubisoft released a free crossover mission with Odyssey, titled A Fated Encounter, which sees Eivor encountering Odyssey's protagonist, Cassandra, while investigating a series of mysterious occurrences on the Isle of Skye. The third story expansion for the game, titled Dawn of Ragnarok, was released in March 2022 and focuses on Norse mythology. It introduces the dwarven realm of Svartalfheim, where Eivor must step back into the role of Odin to rescue his son Balder from the fire Jotun Surtur. In August 2022, a free roguelike game mode titled The Forgotten Saga was released, which again follows Odin as he travels to Niflheim to confront Hel and demand that Balder be resurrected after his death in Dawn of Ragnarok. As Odin, players have to explore Niflheim through various individual dungeons, and run the risk of permadeath as they face increasingly powerful enemies. In September 2022, Ubisoft announced The Last Chapter, a free expansion that will serve as a conclusive epilogue to Eivor's story and her relationship with Odin. It is expected to be released on December 6, 2022, serving as the final content update for the game. The game's first major expansion, Wrath of the Druids, was promoted by Tourism Ireland, the marketing body responsible for marketing the island of Ireland overseas, in order to boost tourism interest. Critical reception. Assassin's Creed Valhalla received generally favorable reviews from critics, according to review aggregator Metacritic. Game Informer gave a highly positive review, praising the narrative, mix of gameplay systems and the world of Valhalla. Each installment hits different sweet spots for different players with varying degrees of success, but for the first time in the series, the balance feels perfect in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. With its engaging combination of combat, open-world exploration, crafted story content, and settlement management, this Viking saga is an epic with a little something for everyone. In similar fashion, Games Radar Plus praised the game for its variety in gameplay, the narrative, and for incentivizing players to make their own decisions. The review summarized the 4.5 out of 5-star review by writing, with a sprawling world to conquer and gory combat, but also the chance to use that iconic hidden blade, Assassin's Creed Valhalla brings a triumphant balance to the series. The Escapist lauded the game as a high point in the franchise, praising the combat, characters, narrative and the improved qualities as a role-playing video game compared to its predecessors, since nearly all the various trinkets and relics and map markers have meaningful purpose. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a rare open-world game where virtually every activity feels worth doing. Like Eivor scaling the snow-covered mountains of Norway, Valhalla achieves new heights for the RPG era of Assassin's Creed, and I've never been more excited to see where the series goes next. GameSpot gave the game 8 out of 10, praising the story and conclusion to several plotlines from the franchise, but noted the lack of character development, ultimately saying, Valhalla is a confident Assassin's Creed title that takes a few narrative risks which, as a whole, pay off. IGN also gave it 8 out of 10, writing, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a massive, beautiful open world fueled by brutal living and the dirty work of conquerors. It's a lot buggier than it should be but also impressive on multiple levels. Hardcore Gamer compared the game favorably to its predecessors Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Origins, citing the improvements in gameplay as the reason. Assassin's Creed Valhalla brings quality of life improvements to the new Assassin's Creed model but doesn't stray too far from familiar territory. If you enjoyed the last two games and want more of that, Valhalla is exactly what the doctor ordered. But there may be some who after spending 200+ hours completing Origins and Odyssey are burnt out on the format. Game Revolution gave the game 2.5 out of 4 stars, writing, Assassin's Creed Valhalla should serve as a learning experience like Assassin's Creed Unity, the last installment that forced Ubisoft to rethink its approach. Valhalla's unnecessarily inflated hour count, limited stealth mechanics, disconnected story, an overwhelming sense of familiarity all point to a series once again on the decline because of its inability to focus on its strengths. Rock, Paper, Shotgun gave a mixed review of the game. While praising its scope, the character of Eivor and the presentation of the world, the progression system and the lack of coherence in gameplay were criticized. Valhalla is daunting and messy, but it's also a pick-and mix of all the best bits from the series. As a conclusion, the review wrote that Valhalla is so complex that it's a poor entry point if you've never played an Assassin's Creed game before. NRK gave the game a positive review, describing it as an exciting, fun, rewarding, interesting and enjoyable journey back to the Viking Age, and as having, by far the most beautiful representation of Norway in any game. In early February 2021, Ubisoft was criticized by fans for what they perceived as prioritizing the use of microtransactions over gameplay improvements and bug fixes. A Reddit post gained traction with the observation that Valhalla's in-game store was currently selling 9 exclusive armor sets, released after launch, which was the same number of sets available in the base game. Awards. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was nominated for Innovation in Accessibility and Best Action Adventure at the Game Awards 2020, and for Outstanding Video Game at the 2021 GLAAD Media Award. It also earned 7 nominations for the NAFTA Awards, including Game of the Year. The soundtrack album To the Dawn of Ragnarok received a nomination for the 65th Annual Grammy Awards in the category of Best Score Soundtrack for Video Games and Other Interactive Media. Sales. Assassin's Creed Valhalla sold more copies during its first week of release than any other Assassin's Creed game, and the PC version also had the most successful launch of any PC game published by Ubisoft. On November 17, 2020, Ubisoft confirmed that the game had over 1.8 million players. The PlayStation 4 version sold 45,055 physical copies within its first week on sale in Japan, making it the second best-selling retail game of the week in the country. The PlayStation 5 version was the 25th best-selling retail game in Japan throughout the same week, with 4,227 copies being sold. Overall, the game is the second most profitable title in Ubisoft history. It went on to become the 5th best-selling game of 2020 and the 16th best-selling game of 2021 in the US. By February 2022, the game had made over $1 billion in revenue.